The mob. Loyalty is the first and last rule to the Columbos. So when Louis betrayed his Uncle Tony, all hell broke loose. Uncle Tony immediately put a hit on his nephew Louis' head, and Louis' dad, Joey, quickly intervened. Joey's the man around these parts of Brooklyn. Joey didn't make any phone calls. He just showed up with almost 50 of his men at his brother's front door, and they were all carrying at least a few guns apiece. Tony's wife opened the door, which probably was a good thing for Tony, because Joey walked up to the front door with a loaded pistol in hand. His index finger gripped the trigger of the gun. Who knows, besides Joey, what he would have done if Tony had answered the door. That being said, he quickly tucked the gun away as Francine greeted him with a smile. Either she's a fool, naive, or she just doesn't know the drama that is going on between her husband Tony and Joey's son Louis. "It's so great to see you," she said in a fake manner. Joey could see through her bullshit, which is why he just walked right past her and entered their residence without greeting her back. "Where the fuck is your husband?" he asked. Tony knows Joey's reputation for killing anyone who disrespects his family, especially his wife and his children. Louis is Joey's oldest child as well as his only son out of the 5 children he has. So trust me, there's nothing anyone can do or say about Louis without feeling Joey's wrath. Tony is also well aware of the fact that Joey has army guns that he keeps getting imported directly to him. Tony sparked the war that he has to finish. But the moment Joey forced himself into the house, Tony watched from upstairs without saying a word as he hid in the corner to keep himself from being seen. This is his household. No one's supposed to disrespect his home, so he wondered, should he get his guns or should he just run and live to fight another day? With that thought in mind, Tony decided to grab a gun and he aimed the gun in the direction of Joey. "Joey, get the hell out of my house," he ordered. Joey didn't listen. Joey's men all withdrew their weapons and aimed it up at Tony. "You can't kill everyone, Tony," said Joey with a sinister grin on his face. "So your best bet, my brother, is to lower your weapon and close your eyes, because tonight your life ends." As Tony pondered his next move, he looked at the crowd of men aiming their guns at him, and there he spotted 2 of his closest allies who somehow just turned their backs on him. "It looks like you were able to buy 2 of my men, Joey," he said in disbelief. He didn't wait for a response. He just shot at the chandelier on the ceiling above all of Joey's men, including Joey and his own wife. The chandelier came falling from the ceiling directly above where Joey and his men stood. They all did their best to take cover. Some were fortunate to get away in time, some weren't, and they paid serious consequences that were even fatal. Tony's wife just ran away, disappearing from the scene, and so did her husband as Joey's men began rushing up the stairs and shooting uncontrollably. Shortly thereafter, Tony ran through a wall that opened up, allowing him to get into his own panic room. He began to realize that he can't trust anyone, especially after his own men turned their backs on him. Tony can't come back from what he did when he decided to place a bounty on his own nephew's head. And now Louis wants to be the one to assassinate his own uncle Tony, and no one's gonna stop him from doing so. The city is now hot, and Tony knows it. He knows that he can only trust a few, if anyone at all. So his next move has to be a great one because he's screwed in more ways than one if he doesn't make a smart move. The Mob, Part 2. Roberto, Tony's youngest son, is a multi-millionaire whose money is as long as his Uncle Joey's. Tony knows his son is the only person he can turn to at this point, which is his lowest moment in his life. Roberto was at home minding his own business when he heard thunderous knocks at his front door. He reached for his pistol and so did several of his men. He checked the monitor that's connected to the camera outside of his home where he spotted his father banging on his front door. "Someone please let the old man in," said Roberto. He knows that his father wants something, and that's the only reason why his father even talks to him in the first place. It's sad, but it's the truth. Tony didn't greet anyone. He just walked past everyone and headed towards his son once they opened up the front door for him. "Roberto, I need all the guns that you have because we're going to war with your Uncle Joey," said Tony. "He entered my home and pointed the gun at your mother." Roberto blacked out after that moment. No one disrespects his mother and lives. "Don't say another word. Every gun that me and my men own will be used," Roberto explained. "No one disrespects my mother, especially pointing a gun at her. They're all dead, man." Tony knew what he had to say to set off his son, and he did just that. "Don't forget Louis," Tony added, with evil in his eyes. Roberto looked at his father in a gravely manner. "They're all dead, and they're going to die tonight," Roberto said. "Just take care of my mother, and I'll handle the rest." Roberto wants both the heads of his cousin Louis and his Uncle Joey now at this point. Shortly thereafter, he left his father at his home to tend to his mother, and then he exited his mansion located near Central Park. He headed straight to his cousin Louis' house with more machinery than the NYPD. 8 vehicles filled with his closest men and guns followed behind him. "Tonight everyone dies," he exclaims to all his men who rode with him. "My Uncle Joey and his stupid ass son Louis will die tonight, and they won't see it coming," he continued. Meanwhile, Joey entered his home in frustration. Louis could see the anger all over his father's face. "So I'm guessing you didn't kill the son of a bitch," Louis said aloud. His father turned to him with his eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. "Shut your damn mouth. He got away, but make no mistake about it. I'm taking his ass down tonight," Joey made clear. Before he had a chance to sit down, bullets began flying in their direction and some of his men struggled to take cover. They all died at that moment as Louis tackled his dad to the floor and they began to return fire. "Uncle Joey and cousin Louis, your lies end tonight," Roberto yelled from just outside of Louis' home in Brooklyn. Their eyes widened as they all realized who's shooting at them. Joey and Louis reloaded their guns and kept shooting after they reloaded their guns. Joey began to head to the back door and Louis followed behind because they're outmanned and they don't have enough guns to return fire. They have to head to the backyard to get to the guns out of their tool shed. However, as Louis followed behind his father, several bullets made their way to his back and to the back of his head. Louis fell to the floor lifeless, and Joey spotted his son instantly. He had no time to think, he just had to react, so Joey began shooting back like a madman once he noticed his son lying dead on the floor. Joey shot several of Roberto's men dead, all headshots. But Roberto is a smooth assassin. He managed to maneuver and dodge each bullet aimed in his direction. It was his gun that ended Louis' life, and Joey would not allow Roberto to live much longer. The mob, the finale. Joey aimed and fired and took cover behind any wall whenever he could. Roberto returned fire and stood his ground even as his Uncle Joey got closer and closer to him. He then ducked behind the cars to avoid from being struck by the hail of bullets being shot at him. His men returned fire as well. The entire time, Joey is really just a distraction as some of his men sneak up behind Roberto and his men. Brooklyn is Joey's territory, and no one's supposed to be shooting at Joey or his family. The tears that ran from his eye socket were tears of pain as he realized that his son is no longer with him. His nephew is responsible for that, and he stopped shooting his gun the moment his men all stood behind Roberto. All of Joey's men held their guns tightly in the direction of Roberto and his men. Roberto noticed the evil grin on his uncle's face, and that caused him to pause. He noticed Joey was looking behind him, which caused him to look over his shoulder, and that's the moment hundreds of bullets left Joey's men's guns and rushed to him and his men, killing them all instantly. Joey stood and watched with a smile on his face, which was the most bittersweet moment of his life. However, he's not happy yet. He still has one more person to get rid of, and that's his own brother, who's responsible for all of this madness. Joey doesn't need any assistance. He's going to handle it on his own. He's going to kill his own brother and anyone who gets in his way. He left his men at the scene to get rid of all the dead bodies that spread all throughout the front porch of Joey's home, and there were more bodies leading out towards the street. The cops weren't called. In fact, the one cop car that did pull up to the scene made a quick U-turn once they spotted Joey. That officer acted as though he never saw a thing. Joey grabbed a few guns from some of the dead corpses on the floor and took them with him. He didn't say a word to any of his men. He just headed to his nephew's home. He knows that since Roberto was the one to come after him, his brother is at Roberto's home being protected by a bunch of cowards. Less than an hour later, he arrived to Roberto's home where he spotted Tony standing outside of the house surrounded by a group of Roberto's men. Joey, fuming with rage, didn't waste any time. He just began firing, shooting at the men from down the street as he jumped out of his car. Tony took cover and ran into the house, and one by one, Joey shot and killed all of Roberto's men with straight headshots. Joey ran into the house and he caught Tony running upstairs. Joey aimed and fired, striking his brother in the knee, sending him straight to the floor. "No, please don't kill me," he pleaded with his brother, who began to creep up the stairs, one step at a time. In no time, Joey stood over him, completely blocking out all of his words as he continued to beg for his life. "You wanted my son dead, so you sent your boy to kill my boy," Joey said. "Now your son's dead, and you're about to be, and so is your wife. So listen closely," he added, just before he walked right past Tony into his bedroom where his wife slept like a sleeping beauty. Tony begged and pleaded with his brother, who didn't listen to him. Just seconds later, he heard the sound of Joey's gun going off repeatedly as he ended Tony's wife's life. Moments later, he headed back out of the room as he saw Tony crying uncontrollably as he continued to plead for his life. His world is all over, and he knows it. Both his son and his wife are gone, the two people who meant everything to him. So as Joey stood over him, he didn't have any more words to say. He just closed his eyes and said his last prayer. But before he could finish, Joey shot him over and over again, ending his life instantly. Joey then headed home with his brother Tony's blood spilled all over him. That didn't matter though, because the past 48 hours has been hell for him. He's lost not only his son, but he ended the lives of the closest men to him after his son. The Columbos will never be the same. They preach loyalty to their loved ones, and they were all betrayed by someone very close to them. Their inner circle was tight, and when they moved drugs across the state of New York, they did it together. They ran their family business as a tight-knit four-man circle. Other family members were included, however their positions weren't of high ranking. Their positions were just being the movers. The real organizer of it all were Joey, Tony, Louie, and Roberto in that order, and that's Crusher to Joey inside as he heads back to Brooklyn. Flashing cop lights flew right by him that's headed to the crime scene that he just left. He didn't pay it much attention. He just thought about the fact that he has to live the remainder of his life without his best friend, his son Louie. He has to go home and reveal to his four daughters that they lost their brother, and to his wife that she lost her one and only son. He's going to also have to reveal the fact that it was her nephew who killed their son. Also, he has to admit to being the person who killed his own brother as well as his own nephew. Joey doesn't know what the future holds. He just knows it's not ever going to be the same.